How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here and welcome to today's video where we check out one of the 4 new maps or revamped maps that came back into World of Tanks console. We're going to have a look at how you should play the map itself, what kind of positions are best for the different tanks within the game, and then give you a little bit of an overview as to how you can basically perform the best as possible on this map. Now, this is probably my favourite map within World of Tanks. I say probably, it definitely is. It just has everything that you can kind of want within the game, no matter what tank class you're going to be playing in, whether that be a light tank or a tank destroyer, or something that's especially super slow, whether you're something super fast. Everything in this map has some sort of position that you can go to, and yeah, it does depend on what tank class you play as to how good of a game you can have. Yes, it typically is that medium tanks tend to perform the best on this map. Doesn't mean that you can't have good games on this with different tanks that you play, but yeah, predominantly you'll be able to have the better games in a tank like this. Something like a heavy tank that can use gun depression tends to do the best on this game. And you'll notice right here, this is kind of one of the positions you want to take early on. Now, have I moved up too far within this? Yeah, probably. We've taken a hit as well when I was playing, so it's not particularly the best move. I should have moved further over to the left as I was coming up to this position. It's a great place to get early damage. You can see we picked up 1200 damage within the beginning of the game. We've got a little bit of assistance from tracking someone, and yeah, generally this is the position that you want to take. This is perfect for medium tanks, or like we've talked about, tanks with gun depression and turret armor. That's predominantly the best area. If you're in something like the Chrysler, this probably isn't the position for you. You want to be going over to the area in E0, where you can see there's a big brawl going on between that tank destroyer, the heavy tanks, and the heavy tanks on our team. That's the area you want to be going in. If you don't have gun depression and you're kind of more focused on trying to win that flank rather than this side where the mediums, the light tanks generally go the most. So what you see here is actually that there's some medium tank or something over in the top left hand corner. One shot comes in, realise it's an autoloader, and we realise it's the Skoda T50 that we're going to have to take out at some point during this game, because he's in that position which typically on REDSHIRE a lot of TDs sit back there. They just wait for the enemy team to advance. It's not necessarily the best position to be able to have the biggest impact in the game, but it certainly is an annoying position that many of the more casual players tend to take. I always find that if you camp there for the entirety of the game, you generally have a little bit of an annoying game. You don't particularly do that well because, you know, you can't impact the game when you're that far back or not pushing up. And if your team wins, you've then got to cover all of that ground to be able to get onto the forefront, to be able to get that damage, and to just have a good game in general. Now, what you see me doing here is, because our team are kind of, it's undecided as to whether we're going to win the right hand flank, we need to kind of deal with this flank as quickly as possible, and yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, just put in pressure. Yeah, if we lose a couple of 100 hit points here and there, not all of them obviously, you don't want to lose all your hit points, but if we have to trade a little bit, get some damage out there and just take out this flank so we can turn around and deal with the base. Typically what happens is if you win this flank, you tend to lose the other flank, especially if you're kind of playing in a different kind of game mode. We had a little bit of lag there, hence why we fired. I'm kind of dealing with that at the minute. Can't really do too much, just internet providers being a bit shocking. But what you can see is actually, you know, we've won both flanks. Now that doesn't typically happen on REDSHIRE, and if it does, you see this kind of thing going on where the battle's only lasted 4 minutes and we've won already pretty much. Now, it does showcase some of the key areas though. You know, when you're playing in that position, you want to take the hills and the areas where you can just show your turret, and that's kind of the key thing about REDSHIRE. Use your turret armor if you have it. If you don't have any, make sure you use a position where you can hide behind something, and that is in the form of many of the rocks. We went over here thinking the artillery was going to be camped behind this big hill over to the left. That's typically where artillery are, and the only other position is where these 2 artillery are there, if they have any sense in their mind. Otherwise they'll just probably be sat in the cap circle, which is terrible position for the artillery to stay in at the end of the game. But there you go, really quick game on REDSHIRE. That's kind of what happens when these new and revamped maps come into the game, and there's not much we can do about that, to be honest with you. We'll look at potentially providing these kind of videos for all of the new revamped maps in the game, Hailbron, stuff like that. Now that we have finished with REDSHIRE, let's look at Murovanka, the other one of the 4 new revamped maps coming into the game. Of course, we're playing in a heavy tank. It is the IS-7. Going to be trying to get a nice review out for you guys fairly soon. Of course, this kind of takes precedent where we're showcasing the new map, showing you the kind of positions you want to be taking, areas to avoid. That is really what this video is kind of trying to do. You don't really want to be taking many of the terrible positions when these maps first come out, otherwise you're going to be losing the games. And definitely on the new revamp maps I've been seeing a lot faster games. That's probably because, you know, people don't know where they're going, and so yeah, hopefully this video is going to help you with that. So what you see me doing here in the IS-7 is just poking this ridge. This is where the predominant heavy tank fighting goes on this map. You get a lot of the medium tank and tank destroyer fighting going on the right hand side of the map, where you see that heavy tank, the tank destroyer, and the medium over on the right in D0. That's kind of the magical forest or whatever that I think Quickie Baby coined. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, essentially that is the area that, you know, that is where the predominant medium tank fighting goes on. Where you want to go in your heavy tanks is, luckily for me, in this kind of position, what we can do is actually come up into the middle. You do have to be wary of tanks like this AMX 5100, who will be trying to come around that side of this map. So that's kind of what you want to be thinking about in your back of your brain. Make sure that you look at the team lineup at the beginning of the game, because that gives you an indication as to the sort of tanks that would be able to push into the kind of area that you'd see me in right now, and therefore you can kind of make the best of your ability to kind of think about what tank could possibly cause a big threat, and if any, and if it isn't a big threat, if there isn't particularly any tanks that are going to be able to get into the position before you and be able to clip you potentially, then you should be alright. Now what you see me doing here, obviously we need to get rid of that auto-loading medium tank, the AMX 5100, because that could be an absolute nightmare if he decides that he's going to come around and get the back of us. Luckily he doesn't, and we can pick him right up. I think he was probably on a reload anyway because he was firing at one of our teammates. Now, we've picked up a decent amount of damage, you know, for the time that's in this game, and what you don't want to be doing is losing all your health at the beginning of the game, because, you know, that's never going to end up well. And what you can see there is the MX-30 obviously didn't get that memo, and he went straight over the hill into 2 tanks that were pretty much on full health, with the whole team pretty much in support. And that's what you don't want to do on REDSHIRE, not on REDSHIRE, Murovanka, sorry, getting my brain all fuzzled now. So that's the area that you want to avoid within World of Tanks, is coming down into the dip when there's a lot of teammates that have clearly taken this game. What you want to do on the enemy team in this kind of situation is actually, you see in front of the Jaegeru here, that actually there's an area or hill that you can kind of get behind, and then you can use it to defend, because, you know, they've predominantly won the right hand side of the map, we've won the left hand side of the map, so they've got to just defend whilst their team then push up from the 0 line all the way up to the A line and get in behind us, and then they can kind of hope to win from that position. Whether or not that actually happens within the game because of their team communication skills, well, you'll just have to wait and see. We picked up a APCR round to try and just go through the front of the VKB's turret there. Unfortunately it didn't happen. We probably could aim a little bit more, but I was a little bit wary as to sitting up there for too long, because tank destroyers in the left hand side of the map could potentially get some shots on us, and we're getting spotted pretty much every time. You can see we aimed one straight into the side of the left hand side of his turret, meaning we get a little bit of damage, up to 3,500 damage, and this is the kind of position you want to be taking in your heavy tanks if you do have gun depression, or at least some gun depression, or just essentially have fairly decent turret armor, that if they manage to hit you, you're going to be able to actually bounce a few rounds. Now that we've come up to this position, we can put rounds into the artillery, which is always very satisfying in the game. We've picked up 1 artillery within this game, and the equalizer there gets taken out as well. So, a little bit of assistance damage as well within this game, and that's one thing that you want to be doing in your heavy tanks, because if you can get assistance damage, not usually happening with your heavies, so that's always good. We're on a combined damage of 5,700, which is very nice. You'll definitely go up on your marks of excellence, regardless of what percentage you're at, whether you're at 94 or whether you're at 2%, you'll definitely go up. Just depends on how much. Maybe not so much when you're at the 94%, but yeah, it's a decent game. You definitely wouldn't be, crying over the fact that you've got 5.7 combined. What you may want to do though is push that damage total even further. What I didn't realise straight away was that there's an Object 268 version 5 on my right hand side that I need to get rid of before he does anything too hurtful to our tank, and yes, he does have a decent 850 alpha damage. However, he is light as hell, and we managed to ram him for 400 damage. We did take a considerable amount, however, he has a terrible turret traverse. Gotta get my words flipped up this video, but yeah, we picked up a nice bit of damage on him. That was really nice to push us even further on our marks of excellence. And of course, when you're playing tier 10, it's kind of the pinnacle. You haven't got any real reason to play unless you're going for those marks of excellence, because obviously you can't go any further on the tech tree. So that's kind of my aim when I play World of Tanks is at tier 10, is just to predominantly get my marks of excellence. What you see me do here is actually make a really quick flip, or at least as quick as possible, against the FV2 on 5B to make him bounce or at least miss us or not deal any damage, and it worked. We managed to pick up a nice blocking shot there, and so yeah, that's kind of what you want to be doing. Murovanka predominantly wins if you can take the hill and then use your brain to then decide whether the enemy has taken the opposite side and then take a defensive position. So initially you want to go on the offensive, take the one side of the map, whichever side you pick, and then take the defensive position against the opponent team if they win. Obviously, if your team has won the other side as well, you can take a full offensive kind of position where you can go down both sides and then kind of sausage sandwich them in the middle. But yeah, if you haven't, then you probably want to be pushing forward and then coming back to defend from the other side, because defending on the map is really, really strong if you set it up straight away and you're prepared for the enemy team's advance. Obviously this game, 8,000 damage combined when we put all of the assistance and the damage combined. Yeah, really decent game. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this kind of overview of Murovanka, and we'll move into one final one for today's video. We will save one of the maps, Heilbronn, for a later video to do kind of on its own as a standalone map. But yeah, Dukla Pass is the next one on the list, and we'll have a look at the gameplay in just a second. And here we are, Dukla Pass. We are in a tier 9 game, I believe. Not entirely sure, maybe it is a tier 8 even. But we are playing in the AMX M445, the French tier 7 heavy tank. We're nearly at the AMX 65T, which I'm sure many of you will be laughing at, because yes, I will have to play that to be getting the French tier 10 heavy tank, which is definitely going to be a grind at tier 8, because the AMX 65T is a pain. Yeah, really doesn't have any armour. The gun is pretty lackluster. It's like playing the tier 7 at a tier higher, and the tier 7 isn't stupidly overpowered. It's good, but when you go up a tier and you're facing those tier 10s in a tank that's essentially like a tier 7, it's not particularly very fun. And so yeah, I guess the one of the worst tanks within the game, and I think Cricky Baby did a video not that long ago on the AMX 65T that I'm sure many of you have watched if you follow him. But yeah, it's going to be interesting playing that tank. Maybe it'll be different on console, we don't know. But anyway, getting back to this video, Dukla Pass, what are the positions that you want to be taking on this map? Well, you see me taking one really strong position right here, and that is on this area where you can basically spot for your team. Obviously I'm in a heavy tank, so I'm not going to be spotting very much within this, but what it does do is allow me to get shots on anyone that may be advancing. If our team spot anyone, I can get a few shots on anyone. Unfortunately this game, not too many people did actually advance on the left hand side, and although this isn't particularly the best game that you'll ever see on World of Tanks, then it's kind of showcasing the areas that you want to be thinking about. And one area that is really, really strong on this map is essentially where I am right now, where you can defend from the right hand side where this AMX 12T is, as well as on on the position, what you saw just behind me where I was sat looking at anyone advancing, and of course that's where the T25/2 is. So really decent kind of map. I think it has a little bit of everything. You know, I don't think that any of these maps particularly have a negative class. I think heavies maybe are probably the worst ones on this map. Tank destroyers fare really well because, you know, there's plenty of positions to kind of ambush people with. There's a lot of long range distance fighting that you can use your accuracy and obviously the alpha to dish out that damage, and then you can kind of wait for another shot to just arise. This map typically doesn't tend to be a really fast and ending one, so it means that if you do have that longer reload with the higher alpha that TDs have on this map, that means that it doesn't tend to negatively affect you too much, as opposed to having the DPM that a lot of the faster firing lower alpha damage guns have. We get spotted here, obviously we're in a heavy, that's a light tank, no surprise there. We have had a pretty shocking game, and although like I said, this map is a really good one, sometimes you have some stinker games, and although this is probably not an awful game, it's certainly not going to be one of the worst games that you ever see, but it certainly isn't one of the crazy ones that you're probably expecting on this channel, because a lot of the time I'm producing videos that are, you know, the best bunch. Yes, I do have awful games as well. I am not a perfect player. I'm not necessarily going to die in this video, but yeah, we're not having a 5k damage game in a tier 7. One thing that I kind of think with this map is sometimes you need to think about pushing up, and that's one thing with Dukla Pass. The pushing up areas that you want to go to, you have to be very aware that there are tank destroyers, and trust me, tank destroyers camp very much on this map, and so you don't want to be too aggressive when you're pushing up. What you see me doing here is taking the offensive. We just need to go because I've had 300 damage and it's 4 minutes into the game, and it's time to actually get some damage, push out that damage before the game ends, because it looks like we're going to win. We've won the right hand side, and then we're kind of going up against the other left hand side, and then our team are going to push round, and it's going to be a sausage sandwich like we talked about earlier, where, you know, you win both flanks and the enemy team really have no chance. So by pushing up, we've essentially got some assistance damage as well, so that's always nice. We've got a little bit of damage, but we're probably not going to get a stupid amount now, because half the enemy team have been taken out already, and a lot of them are on low health anyway. But what we can do now, just continue our advance. There's an IS straight ahead of me that we could potentially get a few shots into before he gets taken out. Doesn't seem to be too aware of our positioning, and so yeah, we can kind of take the advantage to him. Now where he is particularly a place that tank destroyers will want to be going, because, you know, you've got a lot of cover in between you and the opponents. You can kind of stay behind there, you can poke, you can deal your one shot of damage and then pull back, and you can kind of be a little bit sneaky around these kind of rock area on the other side of the map. And of course where we were at the beginning, you know, that area where we could see them crossing, that's what you can kind of hope with your tank destroyers on the other side of the map where we started. Now IS has obviously got something wrong, because he didn't realise that we're sat behind him pumping him full of rounds, and yeah, we managed to track him as well. You see, what I always do is try to track the opponent with our final shot, and yeah, we've managed to pick up a little bit of damage before the game ends, and we picked up some assistance, which kind of really saved this game from being a shocker, at least within the run of games that I was playing. I wasn't doing particularly too well. It's been a while since I've had a full-on game session on World of Tanks console, Modern Armour, and so yeah, I think that that's always interesting to try and push forward and deal with some more damage, and yeah, learn the game, or at least get used to it again. Definitely lag was playing a part in some of the games that we played, but hopefully it kind of showcases you the best areas that you want to be going. A good area, like we're going to mention, is where this medium tank, the T-34-100 is. That is a good position to go to, but unfortunately his team just didn't support him, and he gets taken out at the end of the game. Hopefully that gives you an overview. Obviously, with more videos coming out fairly soon, you'll be able to see gameplay on these maps. I can't guarantee that the gameplay will be on these maps, but I'm sure that, you know, eventually we'll have some fantastic games on these maps, and when we do, they'll be prioritised for videos, and so you can see where the best kind of strategy goes into play on these maps. And this is just an overview of the areas that you want to be taking. But thank you very much for watching. Of course, if you do like this video, maybe you want to check out some of my more guides for the different maps on World of Tanks, and that will be on screen right now. And of course, if you want to learn how to get better at World of Tanks, maybe you want to check out the playlist, and hopefully that will maybe help you a little bit. At least that's the aim of the videos. But thank you very much for watching. I hope that you join me back for the next video in our series, and yeah, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.